Hello, friends, and welcome to Spring at St. Andrew. It is my privilege to welcome you here today from the beautiful St. Andrew Sanctuary. I am grateful, as always, to share this sacred online space with you, where we are all invited, included, and valued as vital and beloved members of our broader worshiping community. St. Andrew is proud to be an open, affirming, inclusive congregation that welcomes all people into the full life and communion of our church. This includes saints and sinners, believers and skeptics, the lost and the found, the wanderers and the wanderers, families of all shapes and sizes, and people from every point along life's journey. No matter who you are or where you've been, no matter what you believe or even if you believe anything at all, you are welcome here and you belong here. If you have any questions about our church, prayer requests for our care team, or if you would like to get in touch with a member of our pastoral team or staff, please email info@gostandrew.com. If you would like to explore deeper engagement with the St. Andrew community through our many classes, group life gatherings, and service opportunities, you can email us directly at connect@gostandrew.com. We would love to hear from you. Just as a reminder, our full Sunday morning worship services, complete with music, prayer, announcements, liturgy, ministry spotlights, and the sermon, are live streamed on our YouTube page each week and permanently archived for viewing anytime. Lastly, to contribute a financial gift to the work and ministry of St. Andrew, you can always visit gostandrew.com/give or text St. Andrew to 28950. And now let's listen together to this week's scripture and sermon.
So Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the officials of Moab. God's anger was kindled because he was going, and the angel of the Lord took his stand in the road as his adversary. Now he was riding on the donkey, and his two servants were with him. The donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand. So the donkey turned off the road and went into the field. And Balaam struck the donkey to turn it back onto the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between the vineyards with a wall on either side. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it scraped against the wall and scraped Balaam's foot against the wall, so he struck it again. Then the angel of the Lord went ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn either to the right or to the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it lay down under Balaam, and Balaam's anger was kindled, and he struck the donkey with his staff. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and it said to Balaam, "What have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times?" Balaam said to the donkey, "Because you have made a fool of me. I wish I had a sword in my hand. I would kill you right now." But the donkey said to Balaam, "Am I not your donkey which you have ridden all your life to this day? Have I been in the habit of treating you this way?" And he said, "No." Then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his drawn sword in his hand. And he bowed down, falling on his face. The angel of the Lord said to him, "Why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? I have come out as an adversary, because your way is perverse before me. The donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If it had not turned away from me, surely just now I would have killed you and let it live."
Have you ever noticed that sometimes the Bible gets really weird? If you read enough of the Bible, you'll eventually encounter some very strange stories that defy human logic and contradict the natural laws of the universe and controvert our sense of what's right and wrong and subvert our modern assumptions about what's morally acceptable or physically possible or scientifically reasonable or logically believable. And strange stories, like the one about a talking bush that catches fire but is not consumed, or the one about a giant fish that swallows a wayward prophet, or the one about an angry she-bear that mauls a group of teenagers for mocking a bald man, or the one about a demon-possessed swineherd that charges over a cliff and into the sea. Just weird stuff, unbelievable stuff, even cringe-worthy stuff. And there are even weirder stories than those, like the one about the Hebrew heroine, Jael, who hammers a tent peg through Sisera's temple while he's sleeping, or the one about a man named Ananias who drops dead in church one day just because he withheld a portion of his offering. I'm going to save that one for Stewardship Sunday, by the way. There are strange stories in the Bible, like today's story from the book of Numbers about a prophet named Balaam and his legendary talking donkey. It's strange because, of course, donkeys don't talk, and we know this. Donkeys can do a lot of great things, I'm sure, but talking doesn't happen to be one of them. There are actually two talking animals in the Bible. One of them is the serpent in the Garden of Eden, the forbidden fruit-tempting, smooth-talking, backbiting, sin-trapping trickster who single-handedly orchestrates the fall of Adam and Eve from their unsuspecting innocence. The other talking animal is Balaam's donkey. But unlike the serpent in the garden, this donkey is not a villain, but a hero, which is great for donkeys because donkeys often get a bad rap, right? Donkeys have always been perceived as stubborn, stupid animals, but nothing could be further from the truth. Donkeys are remarkable creatures. We disparage people by calling them donkeys. People who are foolishly stubborn are often called mules. Actually, if you crossbreed a female horse and a male donkey, you get a mule. And crossbreed a male horse and a female donkey, and you get a henny, as in get your henny moving. Well, a donkey is one of the earliest domesticated animals on earth, the original beast of burden. It has helped desert peoples survive for centuries and has always been the cheap, indispensable laborer for the poor. But donkeys are kind of the Rodney Dangerfields of the animal kingdom. They don't get much respect, despite the scientific evidence that donkeys have a higher learning ability than horses and are stronger than horses of the same size. Donkeys can work in the harshest climates, require little feeding, are patient, gentle, and loyal, and have a remarkable memory and a keen sense of curiosity. But still, you say, donkeys can't talk, and the Bible says that one did talk, and that's just absurd. I know a lot of people hear stories like this one about a talking donkey, and they say, well, that's just the problem with Christianity. It's all just a bunch of mythology. But maybe the real problem is just an extreme lack of imagination. The Bible isn't trying to prove that a donkey can talk any more than Moby Dick is trying to teach us a lesson on deep-sea fishing. This is a metaphor here. The question is, what's the white whale saying to Captain Ahab that he doesn't know about himself already? What's the donkey saying to Balaam that he's too deaf to hear on his own? If you're not familiar with the backstory to this strange tale, let's catch you up. The Hebrews are slowly making their migration from Egypt to the Promised Land when they reach the plains of Moab, not the Moab in Utah, but the one east of the Jordan. And the king of Moab doesn't want the Hebrews trespassing through his backyard. So he sent some emissaries, along with some money, to one of his prophets by the name of Balaam. The emissaries say to Balaam, the king needs a favor. These Hebrews are in our backyard, and the king wants you to come with us and to curse them on his behalf. Because, as they say, quote, he knows that whomever you bless is blessed, and whomever you curse is cursed. Apparently, Balaam is a professional blesser and curser. And he tells the emissaries that he's going to sleep on it and he'll have an answer for them in the morning. Well, that night, the Lord appears to Balaam. And this, by the way, is really weird because Balaam isn't a Hebrew. Balaam is a pagan prophet. Balaam doesn't actually know Yahweh. But God appears to Balaam anyway and says to him, you shall not curse my people, for they are blessed. The next morning, Balaam tells those emissaries, I can't go with you. The Lord forbids me to curse the Hebrews. So the emissaries text the king. Balaam is a no-go, says the text, but the king won't take no for an answer. He sends more emissaries and more money. But Balaam says, I can't do anything other than what the Lord commands, even for all the silver and gold in the world. But Balaam says to them, stay the night. We'll see if God speaks to me tonight. And that night, God appears again to Balaam and says, all right, go with them. But do only what I tell you to do. The next morning, Balaam saddles his donkey and goes with those emissaries to see the king. Which brings us to the part of the story you just heard. As they're traveling, the angel of the Lord, with a sword in his hand, is standing in the road, blocking their way. I don't know what kind of gangster angel of the Lord carries a sword, but this is a serious problem. The donkey sees the sword-bearing angel, but Balaam does not. So when the loyal donkey turns into a field to evade the angel, Balaam beats the donkey. They then come to a place with a wall on either side. And again, this heat-packing angel is blocking their way. And when the donkey tries to evade him a second time, Balaam's foot scrapes against the wall. So Balaam strikes the poor donkey again. When this savage sword-bearing angel reappears a third time in a place where there's now nowhere for the donkey to go, the donkey simply lays down. Balaam is so furious that he beats that donkey with his staff again. And this is where the donkey finally speaks up. She says, What have I ever done to you that you would beat me these 3 times? And here's where it gets really strange, because the only thing stranger in this story than a talking donkey is the fact that Balaam actually talks back to his donkey. And Balaam doesn't say, wait, what? Did you actually just talk to me? Balaam doesn't freak out about his talking donkey. Instead, he actually carries on a conversation with his donkey. And he tells his donkey, if I had a sword, I'd have killed you already for making a fool out of me. Balaam is angry that his disobedient donkey has embarrassed him in front of the king's emissaries. But the donkey isn't finished talking. She says to Balaam, well, allow me to retort. Haven't I always been your faithful donkey, Balaam? Have I ever behaved this way before? As Balaam considers the merits of his donkey's argument and concedes that she does have a good point, just then he looks up and sees that sword-bearing angel standing there. And suddenly, it all makes sense. All along, Balaam's donkey had been trying to do him a solid. She had saved his life from that heat-packing, sword-bearing angel of the Lord. Balaam ends up riding his donkey all the way to the king's palace. And there, having evaded death at the hands of that gangster angel, Balaam does what the Lord tells him to do. He defies the king's order to curse the Hebrews. Instead, Balaam blesses the Hebrews. And of course, the rest is history. It's a weird story, but it's a wonderful story. The donkey could see what Balaam could not see. The angel of the Lord, armed for war, holding a sword in his hand. That donkey knew what Balaam did not know. That angel could have killed him. But the donkey endured Balaam's beatings in order to save his life. And by saving Balaam's life, she had saved the whole world. She suffered Balaam's beatings because she somehow knew that the Hebrews needed Balaam's blessing. Weird, wonderful, and so absolutely relevant. Yeah? God speaks through voices other than our own. God speaks not only through the voices of other humans, but also through non-human voices, through nature itself. The story says that nature is the mouthpiece of God, and Balaam's wise donkey teaches us that God speaks even through the natural world. We know this intuitively and experientially. Has nature ever moved or inspired or spoken to you? A walk in the woods, a hike in the mountains, a sunset on the beach. Have you ever noticed how those experiences and encounters with nature have a way of slowing us down and opening our eyes and clearing our minds, maybe even altering our ways and maybe even saving our lives so that we can return and bless the world like Balaam? The ancient Hebrews have always known about this divine witness of the natural world. One Hebrew songwriter said, "The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard, yet the voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world." Ancient sages, even of other traditions, have always known this. The great Persian poet Rumi once said, "There is a voice that doesn't use words. Listen." Even Jesus knew this when he said that we need to stop talking and stop moving and stop doing and stop worrying and just sit and consider the lilies of the field and consider the birds of the air. Have you ever thought that nature might be trying to tell us something we don't know? Something that can save us from ourselves? Perhaps here on this weekend in which we remember Earth Day, this story about a talking donkey is not so strange after all. What's the donkey trying to tell us that might actually save us? As we think about this fragile planet, what are the polar bears, the western pronghorn, the snowshoe hare, the green sea turtles, the mountain gorillas, and the poison dart frogs? What are they trying to tell us right now that we do not see? As sea levels rise and deserts expand, what are the big red sage and the Hawaiian sandalwood and the wild yam and the ancient redwoods and the great coral reef? What are they trying to tell us right now that we do not see. What is nature trying to say to us that might save us from destruction? Like Balaam, will we beat nature into submission instead of listening to its complaint? Or, like Balaam at the end of the story, will we bravely refuse to accept the king's silver and gold, daring instead to bless the world, to preserve it, and to save it from ourselves and from destruction? Balaam reminds us that we do not always see what is plainly revealed to us, especially that which threatens our very lives. That sword-bearing gangster angel in the story was hidden in plain sight, but it took a donkey to see it. In the modern world, we are convinced that we can know the world objectively. We pride ourselves in standing back and measuring, observing, recording the objective facts and data of our environment as if we are somehow independent from it. We assume that our observation of the world does not actually influence our perception of the world. It's one of the greatest fallacies of modern science and of life itself. There is no such thing as objective observation. We mostly see only what we want to see or what we expect to see, based largely on what we've seen in the past or on what we've been told we will likely see. It's hard for us humans to see what we've never seen before, or to see what does not conform to what we've always seen before. It's called confirmation bias. We see what we expect to see. Isn't this how a black teenager this week can be shot by an elderly white man simply for knocking on the wrong door while being black? Isn't it how we could overlook all the signs of an imminent terrorist attack on September 11th? Isn't it how, after a long winter brings record snowfall, there can still be people in the world who see that as scientific evidence that climate change really is just a hoax? It's confirmation bias. We see what we want to see, but maybe nature is trying to show us what we're missing. Split an atom and peer into its nucleus with the most powerful microscope, and there you will find protons and neutrons surrounded by an electron. We can't actually see what these are made of, but we know now that there's something even smaller within them, particles, or as we call them, quarks, the most basic building blocks of the entire universe. And quarks are pretty quirky. They're about as weird as talking donkeys, actually. And we can't actually see quarks. All we can do is measure them with mathematical equations. And even that is nearly impossible to do. Why? Because some quarks, when we try to measure them, they come in and out of existence, really disappearing and reappearing for reasons we can't even explain. And some quarks disappear from one location and then reappear in another location without even traveling the distance between them. But the weirdest thing about quarks is that some disappear the very instant we observe them. They seem to know when they're being observed, so they just disappear. And this proves that our observation of reality, presumed to be objective, really does exert an influence on reality that we cannot explain. Not only do we see what we expect to see, but it turns out that sometimes our very act of seeing makes it impossible to see the truth. Which is why Balaam's donkey turns out to be Balaam's salvation. Look around you. Listen deeply. Nature is speaking to us all the time. There's a divine voice speaking to us through nature. It's all around us. It sees what we cannot see, and it knows what we do not know, or maybe what we do know, but still refuse to see. Our takeaways for today. God is speaking to us through nature all the time. Consider the lilies of the field and the birds of the air. There is a voice that doesn't use words. Listen.